In my first Friedman IRX review video, I gave a general reaction to my first week with the Friedman IRX dual tube preamp tones and a few sound samples. Now I'd like to do a walkthrough of the Friedman IRX features. The best place to start with a features review of the Friedman IRX tube preamp is to really go over the premise. It's a real Friedman tube preamp circuit paired with a digital power amp modeler. I guess it's based on a generic idea of the Friedman Amps tube preamp circuits, unlike the IRD, which is based on the Dirty Shirley specifically. Mine came stock with J&J tubes, so that's nice. The IRX power amp modeler is supposed to be more than just an impulse response, and you can use third-party impulse responses along with it, but I don't really know much about it other than that. It's intended to be used with or without the digital power amp section, and that's because you might be plugging into a real guitar power amp. And there's several ways of bypassing it. Let's start with I/O. First is the input jack. It's nothing special except that they used mini jacks for it, so it'll look like your guitar cable's sticking out a little bit, but they wanted to save space. There's the effects loop, and you can actually bypass the IRX effects loop by holding the middle foot switch. Or if you wanted to send the tube preamp signal into another power amp without the onboard power amp modeling in IR, just use the effects loop send as your output to the power amp. But you could also do that by pressing and holding the left foot switch, and that will bypass the power section and you go right out of the output jack. The output jack is balanced, but nothing is stereo here. Again, it's just regular old stuff. There is a ground lift. There's headphones. Isn't that nice? That's a really nice touch because I get disappointed when a unit doesn't have headphone out. Next is the MIDI in. That's encouraging. I wonder what possibilities await us for a Friedman IRX MIDI rig. USB out, again, very excited to see what we can do once we plug this thing into the computer. Next, let's talk about controls. There are 3 IRX foot switches, left, middle, right, channel 1, channel 2, and there's a toggle for the IRX boost feature. You can hold each foot switch for another function. We talked about the right foot switch, holding it to bypass the power section. The middle foot switch will bypass the effects loop, and if you hold the right foot switch, it performs the IRX store function. There we go. I wonder how many IRX tone presets we can save and call up using MIDI. Now let's talk about the channel controls. This top row of knobs and switches is the IRX channel 1 controls. Boost V means boost volume, and that's your output volume with the boost engaged, not the boost gain. IRX boost gain controls for both channels are on the side of the unit, and you're gonna need a guitar pick or a flathead screwdriver to control those. The second knob, volume, is your output volume without the boost engaged. The treble knob. I find that most of the IRX EQ control happens right here for channel 1. Next is the middle knob, that's your mids. Turning up the IRX mids control is gonna give you upper mids, like a Marshall. And then your bass knob. I find the Friedman IRX clean tone doesn't have a lot of bass on channel 1. I usually have that knob pretty high. Also, since the mids on the middle control are so high, cutting your IRX bass control is gonna cost you your lower mids. Last is the gain knob, and even the clean channel gets really dirty. I think I like the IRX distortion sound on channel 1 better than the overdrive channel. It seems to have more guts and less sizzle. There's a little cab IR button. It toggles the 3 IRs you have saved on the IRX pedal. You can change them with the PC editor, but it comes stock with 3 fancy sounding Friedman impulse responses. I still have the stock IRs in mind, and I like to keep both channels pinged to the right. The other switch on channel 1 says bright. It changes the IRX bright cap value. Right is brightest, middle is off, and left is medium. This thing gets super bright even on medium. For my balanced tone, I have the bright cap off and the treble dimed. For my very brightest IRX clean tone, I put the bright cap on medium, but then I actually have to pull back the treble knob. The second row is the IRX channel 2 controls. Boost volume and volume are the same. It's just your output volume with the IRX boost on or off. Treble. It's important on channel 2, but I think the whole EQ stack plays a bigger role for channel 2 than it does on channel 1. The middle control on channel 2 is the same thing as channel 1, where it's this upper mids Marshall thing, and it matters more on this channel. The bass control, like channel 1, your lower mids are there, and it matters more on channel 2 than it does on channel 1. Gain knob, here we are. I usually don't need the gain on channel 2 to be higher than 9 o'clock. There is 3 times more gain on this pedal than I'll ever need. If I was a metal guy, I would do a Friedman IRX metal tones video for sure. because it has metal gain. The cab IR switch is the same as channel 1, but you don't have to have the same IRs loaded for channel 2 as you do for channel 1. The tight switch, I don't know what this does, but it just makes everything sound less sloppy. Left is on, tight, right is off, and that sounds bigger. I usually leave it off. You ready to switch gears now? Let's talk about the Friedman IRX PC Editor computer program. You ready for some Friedman IRX problems? It's really bad. There's almost nothing there. It's already glitched out on me once. At first, I thought the IRX computer program was so bad that you couldn't even see where all the little tone settings are on the knobs when you're in the program. But it's actually so much worse than that. It doesn't save the IRX tone settings of all the knobs at all. This Friedman IRX dual tube preamp and DI can save 127 different presets that can be recalled via MIDI. But all 127 of them will have the same gain, the same tone stack settings. They're going to have the same volume. They're going to have the same bright cap settings. That's because the IRX editor and the IRX store feature doesn't save any of that. You can save 127 presets of nothing. Well, almost nothing. You can save the Friedman IRs or third-party IRs. You can save channel and boost selections along with the IRX bypass toggles like IR bypass and FX loop bypass. And you can save a couple other peripheral IRX controls that can only be accessed via the PC editor. There's a boost lock function to let the IRX pedal know if you want the boost to stay on when you switch channels or not. There's an IRX presence control for each channel. It toggles 3 ways. You can't actually sweep a knob though. On channel 2, I can hear that it's doing something, but it's almost unnoticeable. It's irrelevant, and I leave it in the middle. On channel 1, it's a little more noticeable, but it does way less than the bright switch does. I leave it in the middle. There's also this IRX THUMP control, also a 3-way toggle. It's supposed to be for programming the amount of thump resonance to the power amp stimulation in the DI output. DI output. They must be talking about the USB audio to your computer. I can't wait to talk about that. On channel 2, this IRX thump toggle is as useless as the presence control. But on channel 1, I do hear a difference. I think it's like a bass thing, and I like it all the way up. I like it high for cleans. It makes it seem bigger. In fact, putting that thump on high actually pushed me from like to love when it comes to IRX clean tones. But let's get back to that IRX DI output on the USB audio. You can use this to record the IRX to your computer or get tracks from your computer to your PA speaker through the IRX output. On my Kemper or my HX Stomp, I would use this feature constantly to practice with tracks, especially when I'm trying to learn songs last minute for a live performance. It will send my guitar and the track together to my PA speaker, except the Friedman IRX doesn't even have USB audio. The jack is there, but no audio for you. I don't even know what the heck they're talking about calling it a DI. In the manual referring to the DI feature, what does that even mean if there isn't USB audio? This actually makes me angry. I hate when companies miss layups like this. There's already a USB port. There's already software on board. There's already an app. This is not hard. And the cost has already been borne because the components are there. It made me furious when I found out that my Universal Audio Dream pedal had a USB-C port and no USB audio. The only reason they would omit that feature is so that they might not deprive you of the pleasure of buying an audio interface from them as well. Universal Audio will never get my money for an audio interface. Even if I had to pay double for an equivalent product, they will never sell me an audio interface. I don't think Friedman sells interfaces. Their parent company might. I don't think they botched this for fear of cannibalizing a sale. I think they probably didn't want to be bothered with writing a few extra lines of code to make this happen. And I don't take it as an insult like I did and do with Universal Audio. I think Friedman is tube amp guys who wanted to get the tone right, and the features and the actual use case of this was an afterthought to them. But I probably wouldn't buy another one of these pedals from them, like the IRD, mainly because of the USB audio thing. It's a shame too, because it makes the effects loop useless. The main benefit of using the effects loop, instead of just putting some effects after the IRX, it would mix my overall signal with the track coming from the computer and send it to my speaker. I guess if I was practicing with headphones and I wanted to put wet effects after the preamp, then the effects loop is not useless. So I hate to end on a bitter note like that, because there really is a lot to love about this Friedman pedal. In the next video, I'll do a Friedman IRX demo where I sit down and really walk you through my IRX live setup workflow, how I get my different IRX sounds, and actually play through the difference that each of the controls makes. And let me also make that a reminder for you to sit down with your guitar and your amp, whatever amp you have, and your modeler, if you have a modeler, and make some music. Work on your craft. Don't make this all about just geeking out about products. That's fine, but be making music too. Why don't you watch one more video before you go? You can watch it right here.